Happy Thursday, everybody. My name's Aaron. I'm the co-founder, managing director here at BWG Connect, a giant networking knowledge sharing group. Our focus is to connect with as many brands as possible on a weekly basis, just to have cool strategic conversations with them around, hey, what are the biggest pain points? What are the biggest strategies you're trying to solve for as a whole? And then put out content that helps address all of that. So I spend the majority of my time just talking to brands, start up to Fortune 100 and everybody in between. So if anybody here on the call today would ever like just to have a fun conversation, just follow up in an email. More than happy to chat with you. Would love to hear what's going on. So it's in those conversations. We're doing a couple things. The first one is getting those topics, whether it's the podcast, a dinner, or webinar like this. But we're also asking everybody who's working for you and who's not. Help us narrow this down and this craziness of the number of partners and service providers are out there, who's actually really, really working and really good at what they do, but also really nice. When the same people come up over and over again, those are the ones we ask onto a call like this to help educate the community. So if we jump into kind of the topic for today, full funnel formula for Amazon growth, a lot has changed over the years in a variety of ways, on the funding side, the fulfillment side, and the packaging side, and the marketing side. And all of this is coming to a head. I think right now, a lot of it is driven by the huge profitability analysis that are going on right now in regards to like tariffs and the potential impact and what it's going to look like. And so it's more of this like larger, broader call. And so we've got a lot of great friends, partners, supporters of the network, and sometimes, in some cases, really long time friends, Oscar, right? When I was at Paragum here at Amazon. Oh, what a throwback. But I don't mind going around the horn here really quick. Brian, the team at Wayflyer has just been awesome in helping with this community and stay educated. I'll kick it to you first, and then if you want to kick it to Oscar and then Peter, that'd be great. Just, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and Wayflyer and the company, and then once we've gone around the horn, we'll just jump into the conversation. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my name is Brian. I'm based here in Dublin, Ireland, in the Wayflyer HQ office. For those who don't know, Wayflyer is a funding provider to not only ecom, but we work with companies in like wholesale as well. And we're basically looking to fund pretty much everything and anything we can. But I suppose our roots do come down to ecom. The company originally was born out of another company called Conjura, which was like a marketing analytical tool. But by having conversations with people, we just realized that a big constraint for a lot of them was just access to capital, and what was holding them back was just being able to buy enough inventory. And look, I'm sure we'll get into it in this call, but like running out of stock is almost the most annoying thing because you're a victim of your own success. And yeah, I suppose just in terms of a nutshell, we are looking to make basic cash flow something that's easier to manage, and you don't need to put the brakes on so as you don't basically outgrow yourself. But yeah, my role here is being like a sales representative, I suppose, in plain terms. So to anybody on the call who I've annoyed in the past, very sorry. But yeah, like in recent times, we're very much so focusing on networks, like with BWG, and yeah, excited to get into our conversation. So I suppose I'll let Oscar take from here.
Thanks, Brian. Hey, everybody. My name is Oscar Barberin. I'm based in the U.S., good old Midwest boy, former Amazonian, worked there for several years, launched the health and personal care appliance businesses for Amazon Canada. And then for about a decade, ran my own agency called Armor with my de facto co-founder, Anders Palmquist. And then just last year in 2024, we were acquired by Hawk Media, who is one of the largest performance marketing firms out there. And it's been a great marriage because Hawk has incredible content creation, traditional website development, Facebook, Meta, Instagram ads and support, while our team was very deep on the e-commerce marketplaces and retail media spaces. So I've spent most of my career working with CPG and consumable brands, helping them grow their presence on e-commerce marketplaces, leveraging retail media, ads. And then, I'm really excited about this conversation because capital is by far, I think, one of the most important components. And as I say, capital provides the heat. And if you're trying to cook, you need some heat. So I'll pass it on to Peter.
Thanks, Oscar. So Peter van der Westhuizen, last name is definitely a mouthful, but I'm a senior partnerships manager at Lindworks. And really, it's good to be here with everybody here and the panel experts that we have on the call today. Little bit about Linworks. Linworks is a multi-channel commerce platform that just helps you sort of gain visibility and control over your inventory, whether it be on FBA, 3PL, your direct-to-consumer sites, or the marketplaces, and being able to communicate all of that information and data back and forth. And so, definitely have seen firsthand how you sort of a disjointed operations can just limit your ability to scale. It's one thing if you have the capital and a really great marketing strategy, but if your inventory sort of isn't in a good place, it's really hard to be successful there. A bit about my background. I've been on the brand side a little bit with Under Armour and Saucony with over a decade of experience in retail and e-commerce. I've been at BigCommerce as well, focusing on partnerships. And at Linworks, really manage our marketplace partnerships and strategy here in North America. So excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So a quick reminder as we get started here, everybody who's on the line, if you have any questions along the way on anything related to Amazon around growth, around marketing, around funding, about connectivity, profitability, drop them in the Q&A there, and we'll get those answered pretty much real time. So if I kick off the conversation, Oscar, maybe I'll kick it to you first. Like when you're working with, because I know you've been at Amazon. I mean, that's where we met when I was on the brand side. You're at Amazon, and then helping brands out. Like when you see them struggling, you mentioned a little bit around the funding side, and a lot of that conversation is going on right now. Like when you think about, I'm going to take it a different direction, which is more like of that revenue plateau. Brands get to a certain level and then they need to leverage it. And that's usually where some kind of funding comes in. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on there. And then obviously, Brian, Peter, jump in the conversation as well.
Yeah. I thought a lot about this question because, at first when I thought about the question about, when somebody hits this plateau, what's necessary? And the first place I actually went was thinking, hey, capital. Capital is actually, kind of what I said earlier. If you're trying to get something cooking, capital is what is the heat that will provide it. But then when I actually thought a little bit more about it, capital is required, but you can't just flood it in there if you don't have an idea of what you're going to do or plan to utilize the capital in an effective way. And so rethinking through the question, I kind of came to the point saying, all right, in this question, if they've hit a plateau, they're still able to produce product and they're still able to keep inventory. Then to me, actually, probably what's happening is they've maximized their current audience and they need to expand that audience. And then they need to work to drive deeper with their customers. So actually in that instance, it's kind of the capital and marketing. The marketing is what the capital is going to be deployed into. But I think the marketing is, if you've hit that plateau and it's not an operational problem, like you're not running out of stock, then it's like, hey, you need more customers. And so that's what I kind of thought about when I thought about this question. But I'd definitely be interested to hear what Brian or Peter have to say about, kind of people hitting this plateau.
Yeah, I suppose when you're saying plateau, do you mean like they've saturated the market, that there's no extra, I suppose, wiggle room to increase their share? If that is the case,
Yeah, I'll just clarify a little bit, because what I hear from brands a lot is, they've hit this growth curve and, they take off on Amazon and then it rounds out.
Right.
And they're trying to figure out, is this my marketing agency? Do I need to pour more in? Is it worth it? Or am I in the land of diminishing returns and I've capped it out? They do the deep analysis around, okay, well, what items are moving, which ones aren't? Maybe I'm out of stock. Maybe I've lost the buy box. And so that's that plateau that a lot of people hit. They're like, I thought I was going to keep going up the hockey stick curve forever.
Yeah. Well, I suppose on that, Amazon is a massive, it's a supermarket that you're going in, and there's a certain amount of items. So a lot of people we noticed on our side, they haven't really got the additional capital available to put new products out there, new SKUs, which is the way you keep your business alive, keep evolving. So and also as fees increase, as Amazon change their terms, would hold more of your cash, trying to build up that buffer of almost like your own personal savings, but in the business terms, is becoming more and more challenging. There's a lot of brands that we in Wayflyer would have spoken to 2 years ago who would be saying that, I haven't got a cash flow problem, it's completely fine. And then when they're coming into their busy season and this kind of debt by 1,000 paper cuts, they've noticed that they've been able to put aside less and less, and Amazon are holding more and more, and then they have a massive increase in cost of goods all of a sudden coming into Q4. They just haven't got money to even cover that. So trying to even add more products on top of that with the stress of what's going on is just it's a difficult situation, and it's not getting any easier. It just means you need to be a bit smarter in how you plan everything.
Yeah, Peter, I'd love to
Yeah, I
hear
mean,
your thoughts as well. Yeah.
jump in, right? I think it's really going to be a combination of the entire funnel working well together, right? When we think about, having the capital available, what you're going to do with it, I think it comes back to starting with really smart data and insights and understanding, where am I most profitable? Where should I double down in terms of where I'm seeing the fastest turns? Which product should I, lean into? And then how do I build, to Oscar's point, a campaign around that to really drive the customer acquisition to where the market's going? And then do I have the capital to be able to fund that around those big moments that I'm planning to be able to be successful on Amazon and really sort of overcome that plateau? So it's really not one specific thing, but it comes down to like, is the entire sort of, three-pronged approach around your capital, your fulfillment, and sort of your marketing and that strategy really, working in lockstep, and are you able to overcome it that way?
So when you're talking to people about like the full funnel approach, a lot of times we think of like full funnel marketing, but it's a little different than that. You're thinking holistically around the business.
Holistically around the business, right? Because again, a lot of times brands will think, I just need to spend more money, I just acquire more customers. But if you aren't really set up to fulfill against that, right, and if you're unable to, don't have the inventory or stock in place to really make good at that and create a great experience around fulfilling that quickly, it just turns into sort of a ROAS killer, right? I'm overselling. I don't have enough inventory to push through, and now it's impacting my rank on Amazon. And we do see that when your brands come to us, that's a lot of the times the problems that they're trying to solve is where they're investing and how we can help them be successful.
And I think to add to that, one thing on the plateau thing, I always think about the movie Castaway, when he had to break through that like coral barrier and like had to get over the wave to like make it away. Same thing. You kind of keep running into the same barriers with your current business, the way it's structured, with how you're operating, and you're kind of, you're meeting that thing. So you need to change something, right? Either marketing deployment, additional capital, whatever it is, but something has to kind of vault you into that next platform. And then when you think about the full funnel component, one of the things Amazon did immediately, and so since Amazon did it, all the marketplaces are going to do it. But basically, the leveraging of self-service, forcing brands to do a lot of the work that a traditional retailer would have done for them, managing catalogs, just a lot of the branding and content within the store and price promotions within the store. So for now, like almost a decade and a half, 2 decades, Amazon has slowly, like bit by bit, forcing brands to take on more total responsibility of their entire business. So not just production, not just content anymore, not just pricing, but now it's operations. Now, they just keep adding these chunks to the total business that the brands have to manage that they never had, that in brick and mortar relationships have been kind of passed off to other players. So.
Yeah. I mean, how often do you get engaged in trying to help brands explain that to executive teams? Because I think this idea that happens with Amazon and brands and the executive teams is they do think just spend more money, right? Where, which could work, right? But it's not the only answer. Right. But I mean, Amazon's going to tell you it's the only answer, right? Yeah, grab an SVS or an AVS or grab do more paid media. Back in the day, it was AMG. There was always an ask. Amazon wants you to spend as much money with them as possible, but it's much more than that. Are you getting? It'd be interesting if to hear like each of your perspective on like trying to helping brands explain to executive teams. Are there any like ways that it makes it easier that have been breakthroughs to help them understand that it is like you're talking about, Oscar? Like it's so much harder. Like, you're being asked to do so much more than a traditional, just I'd say, salesperson, right? It's just so much more.
Yeah. Brian, Peter, you guys have any thoughts there? I answer this question all the time. So, but go ahead, Peter. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
At least from my perspective, right? A lot of times when we're having those conversations with brands, you do get to that point where like, help me sort of build that business case to sort of, justify where I want to make that investment, right? And when we look at that, at least from our lens, it's, we try to really go deep into understanding what their problem is, and then leaning into right, what's necessary to really justify, in many cases, our existence. Automating, I think, as much as you can from an operational standpoint is key in terms of, cost savings from a resourcing perspective around people power, so that you can reinvest elsewhere. And then also from a investment standpoint, how do I grow if I'm plateauing on Amazon? I think it's also a multi-marketplace approach, right? But with that comes more complexity. Like maybe I want to run a campaign on TikTok, leverage TikTok Shop, which actually is going to increase my Amazon growth as well. And how am I getting creative around doing that? But with that comes sort of a cost around all of those marketplaces require unique kind of workflows in order to be successful there. And that's really what we try to build a business case around, is use automation, time savings, and a growth opportunity around marketplace connectivity to help them sort of paint that picture around growth and sort of bottom line cost savings for the exec team that they're working with.
Yeah, I even think on our side, like we're almost like the cherry on top, that once brands understand their lead times, they understand the actual costs involved, and the last bit what the Wayflyer do is kind of being the fuel to the extra bit of fire. So we just add that extra bit of oomph to what's available. Like once they understand what their capabilities are, how many products can they package, how many, like what does the capacity have across their different locations across the country, and they go, right, well, we know that we'll take money off Wayflyer. It'll cost us a certain amount, but we know we can sell it and make large profits off it. It's even on our side, like sometimes like the conversations with those brands they're very easy because they know exactly how to use it straight away. They just see it as a number of how they can invest into their inventory. But like these guys are the guys who create the demand, and it's by the time they get to us, doesn't need to be too much convincing. They pretty much have it in their mind already of what suits their requirements. The only thing that's maybe had a conversation with is just maybe structure and repayment program, but like that's as detailed as we really.
For us, a lot of times I first try to frame the understanding of the brand that Amazon is not a race. There is no finish line. There is no end. This is an ongoing, continuous situation. And with that, and what I like to paint is this picture that you're in a river and you're constantly trying to get better footing. And then every now and then a log is just going to come down and cream you. And there's nothing you can do about it. And so you just get smashed by a log, and then you get up and you try to like re-get your footing again and constantly improve, the operations, the economics, your packaging, your weight, every component that has a cost to it. And so that's where I first try to structure the conversation, so that the understanding is that there's investments, there are times to speed up, there are times to slow down, but there is no stop. There is no end. This is going to be a continuous improvement. And some things may not be what we want right now, but we're going to be looking at how to shave those things down. And then that's where the investments come in, is, hey, how do, maybe it's new packaging, so let's invest in that. Maybe there's a new set of content that we want to run, or new idea in terms of imagery or branding. Those are where the investments come in. And then we talk about how does this feed, this improving of your position, so.
No, I love it. It's what I feel we're doing right now across the board is everybody has to level up again. And it used to be you had to level up every 3 to 4 years, and then every 1 to 2 years. And now it's like every 6 months, because in the past, if I look back, we had this conversation about full funnel, and not full funnel marketing, but full funnel Amazon, everything from the fulfillment side, but now the product selection side, the packaging side. Obviously, there's marketing, and then then there's the funding piece that fuels it all. That it used to just be, my growth is starting to slow down. Okay, fix my content and throw paid media at it.
Right.
And we're at a point now where, like, I guess my advice for brands is like to take that pause if you're at the spot where, things are starting to slow down, and look at it holistically. What does my supply chain look like, right? What does my product selection look like? Do I need to expand? What are the adjacent categories that I can hit to the next level? Put together, are there other marketplaces that I could get connected to? Holistically, what does that look like? And then what does it cost to
Right.
go tackle it?
Right. And, you know, Aaron, to add to that, one of the things that I find, as you said, people are having to level up more frequently. And there are so many people who have figured it out before the old way, and they want to hold on to that understanding. They want to hold on to that way of operating. So I'm still talking to some people who are still even stuck in vendor central 1P relationships. And oh, well, how's Amazon going to match my price? And look, dude, we've moved on to FBA. We've moved on to fully controlling your price. Like, you know, and so it's very interesting having these conversations with different people who've been stuck, to be honest, stuck at different points in time. And the new brands who are not stuck, who are coming on for the first time, they're welcoming all this. They're accepting it and they're playing with it. And so I think one of the biggest problems I see in like mid-level brands is they're stuck in the way that they had solved it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, which was great back then. They're not very interested in trying to open up the idea bank again and, you know, bring in these new ways of doing it. But the new brands who come in who can do that, they are now outpacing and out competing. And so it's a very weird dynamic to be conscious about, you know.
Yeah, I mean, change is tough. Anyways, I didn't mean to jump in. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say you're dead right. Like, people look at things in isolation and they don't see the correlation. But at the end of the day, like, you need to have a good product. That's where it all starts. If you're making shortcuts to your product, you're going to make a lot of adjustments and elsewhere. And the way Amazon works is competitive. They don't want a monopoly from anybody. Like, it'll be found out. But yeah, like, completely agree. Like, people need to look at these things as one, as opposed to 3 separate or 4 separate things.
It's harder than it's ever been before. That's the straight up, that's the reality. I mean, but I do agree, like, Oscar, what you're saying is it never ends.
Yeah.
Right. It's going back to, like, my wife's an engineer, right? Continuous improvement. That's what it is. And you have to constantly be staying on top of what's new, and you can never take your foot off the gas, right? You just have to find the new innovative ways and being open to experimentation, trying, failing, to stay on top of, hey, what's the newest things that are out there? And it's takes special people, because then at the end of the day, you also have to explain everything you're doing to executive teams to justify it.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. But so what are some of the newest things that you see popping up that people should be aware of? I do want to talk just a little bit about, I'm very interested in the Wayflyer model of, because I think traditionally brands would go to a bank for like working capital or something like that. And so it needs to be more real time. That's one of these changes that's popped up. What is that difference that you have? I would love to hear that.
Yeah. I suppose even like in the last couple of years, like, it's banks are becoming less and less, they're becoming more risk averse towards ecom. And like, that's can be seen in terms of actually the amount of money they're giving out. I'd say from their perspective, if I'm thinking like a bank, they probably just don't know how to underwrite ecom brands correctly. It's almost like they come down and that you come into a room and say, look, I have a year and a half worth of experience here, but my warehouse is in across America, and I have suppliers from China, and they're trying to get their head around it, and it's quite difficult. They're thinking, like, well, what personal guarantees can you give? What storage units do you have? And like, how have you performed over the last year and a half? And you might be a brand that goes, well, the last 9 months that we're talking about right now, I haven't sold anything because I sell Christmas ornaments. But in the next 3 months, I'm going to make a killing. But the bank's like, yeah, fine, but still, no, we're not taking that chance. Whereas ourselves, like, what makes us different is we look at the future. It's forecasted revenue, and we can see the upside and potential. But also in terms of speed, like, I'm sure everyone's dealt with banks in personal life or like getting a mortgage. It takes a bloody long time. And in ecom, where you have a 2 or 3 months window to make your sales, getting your business underwritten in a matter of days can be massive. And also that also goes to brands who are buying inventory regularly, that if we can underwrite you in a week and the bank takes 2 to 3 months, the amount of inventory cycles you've missed out on just by us being able to give you cash. And because you underwrite the company like typically a bit better and understand it better, our exposures are a lot larger. So that's kind of where we kind of see a lot of success. I'd say speed and understanding is probably the main points of why somebody would go with ourselves.
I mean, it's everything, right? You can't be 2 months late. I mean, especially the season might be all the way gone, right? You're selling grills or Christmas ornaments or something, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, beach chairs or blankets or parasols. Like you miss the season, you literally miss the entire
oh,
season.
the amount of times I have a conversation, and it's not even necessarily bank, but just they've missed that sweet period of like that Goldilocks zone of 2 or 3 months, and I'm talking back and I'm like I'm down 30-40% where I could have been last year, and if I was 30% bigger this year, then it's like exponential growth. So, and the fact that if you are a seasonal business, you have to wait another 9 months, and you can really see it when you're talking with certain founders that it's something that they deal with. They're going really regret not being able to optimize it ahead of time. And even in recent times as well, that we would typically see like our highest season would be September, October in terms of brands preparing for Black Friday and just the overall Q4 madness. People just want to spend money. The last year or two, we're noticing that trend coming a bit sooner. That maybe July and August are now when people are looking to really basically put the investment into their inventory. It's because they're just nervous. They don't know what's going on. Especially, I think in recent times with tariffs, everyone's a bit scared, and they finally decide, right, now is the time to put the foot in the gas. So it's constantly evolving. It's almost like the trends are not. There is no real trend. It's people are adapting to the situation they're in.
I mean, to that point, right, I think, Brian, you nailed it. The ability to accurately forecast based on your historical data and the ability to be flexible, those are going to be key things that you need to have in place to be successful for, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Just really looking at the historical demand, making sure that, your supplier is able to get that inventory to you. And then obviously you have to have the capital to fund that and also have the capital to fund the marketing strategy behind that. And it is. We were seeing the same thing. It's happening earlier and earlier in the conversations that we're having in the sales cycle. And that's kind of why I alluded to earlier. It's like this, all these things, all these pillars that we're talking about, they kind of have to be working together for you to really be successful and essentially just not leave any revenue on the table when it comes to those big moments of the year, which for many, retailers, it's make or break. So.
Right. I think to add to what Peter and Brian have said, I remember pre-COVID, we had a couple clients leave us because some other agencies like, oh, we're going to 10X you. We're going to 10X you. And I looked at this person and said, you don't even have the inventory for 10X. You don't have the capital to be 10X the size. Like, this is ridiculous. So after COVID, all of them came back because none of those magical plans came to fruition. But in terms of like a Black Friday, Cyber Monday, I totally agree that it's about understanding the business historically. What has it looked like seasonally and in those months? And then, when you're planning, I always do worst case, what I expect, and best case. And then I also try to create 2 or 3 pivots. So, hey, if this ASIN, if this item starts selling out, what's the new price I'm going to push it to? Because I want to slow down the amount of sales. Or if it's not moving, what am I willing to kind of go down to? And have these preset plans, a couple of them. And then the last thing is take notes. Kind of like, hey, you set your plan, you've looked at the data, you looked at historicals, you look at, kind of what you hope to hit. You have a couple iterations, pivot points, and then let it ride. And, if things went off the rail, certain place, take notes for next year. And next year is really, to be honest, Prime Day, which is going to be in like wherever you are, it's like the next big one, 6 months. So I totally agree with everybody. It's knowing the historicals and then kind of having some little plans in place. And I guess the one other thing I'll mention, Aaron, because you said what's changed. One other thing I've noticed, 2 things. Contract manufacturing has gotten a lot better. The bottles, and this is mostly in CPG, but like it just seems better than it was 5 years, 6 years ago. Like people can make better finished product items that just look like it. And then the other thing that's totally gotten better is obviously content creation. We used to fight people all the time to make images and to get lifestyle photos and all this stuff. No longer do we have to fight for that. People really understand, hey, the content's what people consume first. It's what sets your price. It sets the customer experience. And so it's worth, investing in that space. And there's good people, there's a lot of good services out there.
Yeah, it's awesome. Just as we're halfway through here, just a reminder, as you have questions, drop them in the Q&A section there, and we will answer them, pretty much real time as we go. So keep dropping those in. We'll keep answering. It's amazing to me, the new tech that primarily Amazon has driven along the way. right? From, the marketplace tools and analysis, the paid media tools that are out there. It develops a whole new way of financing for businesses. Like, I don't know. It blows me away. And, the next level of AI is going to be pretty cool too. So question, how can Amazon sellers prepare operationally and financially for major growth periods like Black Friday, Cyber Monday without overextending themselves? Who wants to tackle that one?
Do you guys feel that we hit that one? I felt like we kind of tapped that one already.
I feel like we organically moved into that one, but yeah.
But yeah, I guess, as we said, I think it's the tracking the historicals, looking at seasonality, and then having, for me, this is what we tell, and then saying, all right, worst case is like, hey, there's been a 20% plus decline on sales of your top 3-4 ASINs. That's like worse. That's horrible, right? Like that's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then there's like, all right, we expect a 10% increase. That's kind of like expected or whatever, whatever you expect. And then, oh my gosh, this thing's blowing the doors out, like 45, 50%, seasonal increase. What are we going to do? Because we don't want to run out of stock. So those are kind of the situational planning that we do beforehand. And I think that's why you're seeing people get money earlier, because they need to have the product made, and ready to ship out and into the fulfillment centers, by September, realistically. And then they have to have those plans, all the promotional plans that then follow once that product's there. So I guess, but yeah, Peter, Brian, if you want to add to that a little bit.
I was just going to say that, like, again, like we're very much so the last piece of the puzzle. So like you could have the best CTR, you could have the best inventory management, and your ads could be killing it. But if you haven't got the inventory to back it up, then there's no point. So it's a case of, as you mentioned, it's about keeping momentum and keeping on top of all the pillars. And it's like there's demand, which you need to get in place first, and then we are the last bit of supply. So I don't think there's much more to say than that on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other thing I'd add, right, we've obviously tackled, having really great forecasting. I think it's also looking at which manual workflows can I automate that would really reduce time in terms of my ability to fulfill, right? And I also have to be aware that I'm probably going to bring in some seasonal staff, right, to really overcome the additional order volume that we're expecting. And do I have a system in place that's pretty turnkey, easy to utilize? And how do I think through that piece of it as well? So as you look at, your fulfillment operations, maybe even in the warehouse, what can I sort of automate with sort of the right tools and the right software? What can I automate from an order management perspective, right? I know something is going to come in with this particular product. I want this shipping rate and I want that automated, and I don't have to think about it again. So the more manual processes you can remove preparing for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, the better the experience, the better you're going to fulfill. And then all that other stuff that we're talking about in terms of being able to make good on the promises that you're really making to the customers during a peak time will be that much easier to manage.
So you're doing a regular forecast, because I mean that's a lot of people are looking for, help in that area as a whole. How, when you think about, so a couple of things that are coming top of mind as you're chatting here, Peter, is one of them is like the forecasting tool. How is it used? The other one, what are those top things that people need to think about automating?
Yeah, I mean, I think the forecasting tool, again, is just really diving deep into your historical data, understanding, what is selling through, what has, been selling through very, very well. And then pivoting that to Oscar's points, like, what are my big bets, right? I know that this product has a lot of potential. Here's what the data is showing. Here's how much I think I need to have on hand, and getting really tight with that piece. And diving deeper into that, right, I think is going to be key, because again, that's how much capital you're going to invest and where you're going to invest your ad spend to make sure that you're turning those as fast as possible. And then, hopefully not running into the scenario where you have to increase the price because you did nail the forecast and you're able to maximize and optimize that revenue. So just really understand what products are, which products you have within your portfolio that are going to sell through at the most optimized rate. And again, back to your point around just getting ready, I think automation is key, right? Anything that you can automate that somebody doesn't have to think about, avoids manual mistakes, which avoids headaches in terms of your ability to fulfill. And we've all done that. We've ordered something, during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. It's 3 weeks later, I'm like, I'm still waiting for this thing, right?
Mm.
Right. And so like, how can you as a brand make sure that it's not due to human error? You've automated those workflows, and it's sort of a seamless experience.
And I think, to add to Peter's point, one thing, every brand should be covering an 8-week forward demand plan on every single item they're selling. And that 8-week forward demand plan should incorporate seasonality and incorporate pricing promotions that are going to be had during that period. So they should be rolling into this, like as they're coming into Q4, it should just be like, oh, like we've done it 48 times this year. This is just number 49, and then, it bumps up because, there's more traffic, there's more stuff happening. But I kind of feel like this should be just one more swing at like another at bat, basically. So
How many people are actually doing that? I was thinking, as a base level for brands on the line today, if they're gauging where they're at and where they should be, is it 5 out of 10? Is it 2 out of 10? And that's why those 2 are winning? Like, you deal with
it's a good question. How many people exercise, get enough sleep, and eat right? Like we all know we need to do it. But there's not a lot of us doing it. So I would say, when we work with clients, let me put it this way. I have never come into a client scenario where I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of demand forecasting and operational understanding they had of their offers. That's never happened. So I don't know about Peter and Brian. Maybe you guys, maybe that's why people come to me, right? Like they're already in shambles, but like maybe you guys have seen something else.
I'm just laughing like, oh no, I can't help you. you're better than me at this, so you guys keep going. Yeah, I suppose like in terms of like having understanding of like what the requirements are, like you are going to get the right person who does know exactly what they need, but you'd be surprised by how many people don't know exactly what they need or don't know what they might say to you, okay, at the end of this year, I want to hit 9 million in revenue. And you kind of go, right, you did 4 million last year. So, and to hit 10 million, you're going to have to buy a lot more inventory. How much is that inventory going to cost you? Where are you going to get it from? And sometimes they haven't thought through that process, and like, they might have a rough plan, but the actual detail might be lacking at times. And unfortunately, at Amazon at the moment, and how it's like walking through a minefield at times, like the detail is essential to have. So yeah, like it's obviously you do come across brands that have it all nailed down, but it's probably more common than you think that they don't.
Yeah, it varies wildly, right? Like you could have brands that are in the tens of millions that have been around for a long time, and they're doing things the way they've always done them. And you're like, how are you still utilizing spreadsheets to this capacity, right? We run into those scenarios. But then we also run into scenarios where brands have built, the reality with e-commerce is there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of customization around unique tech stacks. And just really, I think the art and science is really understanding how to optimize the tech stack that you have with the right solution that can get you there. And so again, you get the very sophisticated, where they're going to be really deep into trying to solve those problems and automate as much as they can. And then back to the very simple, it's like, oh yeah, we can alleviate a lot of pain right away. So we definitely see it across the spectrum for sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking of it from the standpoint, you said 8 weeks rolling. So, but also, Brian, when you're talking about, hey, we want to double next year, I hear that a lot. Like, yeah, I want to go from 5 to 10 million. And so how do we break down that? And so in my mind, okay, my executive team just said, hey, we need to double from 5 to 10 million. I need to go back and do a couple things. One, overall analysis on every one of my products. Look at the market share on Amazon. What is the potential of me hitting that number? Then the next one is, if I can't, okay, well, what products do I need to add on? What product, either line extensions or new products, do I need to add on to the portfolio as a whole? Then, being able to send that over to a forecast to make sure that I'm going to get the inventory and then cost that out. But then what is the marketing spend that I'm also going to have to spend to get those items up and running on first page of search or whatever, while I'm supporting all the other ones as well? But this becomes a gigantic financial exercise at the end of the day that I need to then go back and present and say, hey, if you give me this amount of money, then we're going to be able to hit this number. But it goes beyond paid media now, right? Where I think literally in the past, it was mainly paid media.
Yeah. there was always this assumption that products just made themselves and just like magically appeared in the warehouse. And all you had to do was advertise them and they would just, they'd be there and they'd fly out. And it's like, no, that's not the reality. And the other problem, it's like you mentioned, like, hey, we're going to have an ad campaign going, but at first it's not going to be very efficient, right? And then that efficiency should improve, which reduces the cost. So there's all these like moving, costs that are like, there's not just a speed, but there's a velocity, there's a change in that speed that's happening. And so it is, the way I've always had to do it, because it gets so complex. And I think with Peter's tool, like that can help provide, visibility, but I've had to think about it just as thin ice. Like, where do I know for sure I'm solid? And okay, from that point, from a budgeting standpoint, so, all right, with this amount of money, no matter what, I'm going to be able to execute what I need to get done. But as budgets get tighter, people want to have, people want to be on that thin ice, and it's tough, because it may not be what you need to support the whole thing. So,
when we think about even external traffic, right? When we think about brand building as a whole, line extensions, whatever it might be, how do you look at like that external traffic piece, and what role does that play in your mind on building an Amazon business and hitting numbers?
For me, and I'm sorry, I'll put in, I'll let Peter and Brian talk some more, but, for me, it's, there was always kind of like the discussion about how PPC improved your organic search on Amazon. And there was like no real like mathematical way to prove it, but you could see it and you could experience it. Well, Amazon loves, and all these marketplaces love new people to the party. They do. And there's no, like, I don't have a mathematical equation like, hey, for every person you bring from TikTok over, it means this. But it for sure, particularly TikTok, is kind of what, FBA 2012 was. It is where you can do some actions that don't cost a ton, that get an incredible amount of visibility. And now Amazon has evolved, in my mind, to a point where it's a net. It's a net that catches people that are moving, streaming from one platform to another, shopping from one place, viewing something. It really is just kind of this catch-all net. And so I think external traffic is a key component to invest in to grow both that Amazon presence and then, in general, your business across the board. But I think it is absolutely mandatory.
And Oscar, do you even think it's for just brand awareness and companies wanting to be able to sell on their own platforms and being able to be more omni-channel, or what do you think?
Yeah. So I think that's an awesome question. Particularly in CPG, what we're seeing is people want a brand to be less wide in terms of what it offers, but wide in the channels in which it's offered. So I can find it on an airplane, brick and mortar, at Costco, and D2C, and then also on Amazon. And what we've been trying to talk to our clients about is thinking about the quantity and size for that channel, moving your best customers ultimately to your own D2C. They should have the best content, the best experience, get the most value. They're the closest to you and you should treat them the best. But you should think about, how do I constantly like move all these people through their purchases over like a couple years to my website, if that makes sense. So
yeah, that makes perfect sense. No, go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, I just remember, I think it was My Protein. I'm not about their biggest side of the Atlantic, but they were leaving like waivers and everything on their boxes, and they were shipping them to Amazon. Like, I'm not sure Amazon are happy about that, but it was very much so to build awareness of the brand and now going to their own website. So and you see it in retail as well. So yeah, I can see the whole like different stacks and combinations, how they work together.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just piggyback on that. It really comes down to being present and available where your consumers are and where they want to shop, right? And that means you have to be able to diversify the marketplaces that you're available on, and also understand strategy for each of those marketplaces, who the demographic is, right? Like, the buyer on TikTok utilizing TikTok, they're probably not going to buy on TikTok Shop, or maybe they do, but they're probably going to go back to Amazon or your D2C to convert there. Or maybe you're testing something, right? And the other part of that is the ability to test new marketplaces pretty quickly without a lot of expense. I think that's a hard thing to do without the right solution in place. But if you wanted to test, on Shein, for example, which has a very great, Gen Z female demographic, and if you have a product that's really strong there, great opportunities to test the waters, and to Oscar's point, get them to become brand loyalists, and then now they're following your brand not only on Shein but other channels as well, and then ultimately end up becoming a loyal customer, return customer on your D2C. But I think the key there is obviously diversifying that strategy, but doing it in a way that's cost effective, right, and easier to manage and maintain.
100%.
Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, jump
Peter,
in.
I think it's really interesting thinking about each channel has its own customer dynamics, and one of the big kind of like seesaws I measure are some people have a belief that more is better, and other people have a belief that concentrated is better. And like, how does your product show up? Does it show up in gallons because this person wants gallons on them, or does it show up in little vials because they want a super concentrated thing? And different customer, and so it's like it's just interesting thinking about the channel and how you present that to them. So
right.
What have we missed today that you thought would come up? It's always a good question, right? Like, are there key things that you're running into with brands all the time that we just didn't happen to hit on today? And I also want to kind of work into like key takeaways as we kind of get to the end here.
One thing I'm running into a lot is, and I think this is a good thing, brands, and this is over the last 6 months, are taking a much longer view of their financial existence and their existence on the platform than I've ever seen them do. And what I like is there's not sometimes that previously that led to indecision and not doing anything. People are being decisive. They are making decisions and they are moving forward, but it is very plotted and very like no half measures. And they're really trying to vet out all the little cost components. And so that I think has been different that I've noticed. And maybe something we would have brought up, like, hey, how have the mentality of brands changed? But that's just something I've noticed recently. That's been a kind of a palatable difference,
Yeah, for the longest time, it was growth at all costs, right?
Yeah.
When they realize they're taping a $10 bill on every shipment that goes out the door.
Yes.
Like, hey, maybe we can't do this anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've had to, right? Like with tariffs, everything, and how that's impacted, the environment. They've just had to be a lot savvier in terms of how they're, making their decisions, the bets they're going to take. And then, to your point, there's less room for error, right? Optimize at all costs, and just making sure, we see it, as well in terms of them making sure they have the right, systems and processes in place. And they're also just taking a little bit longer, right, in terms of making that decision around, okay, here's where I'm going to double down, because they're, to Oscar's point, definitely doing their due diligence. Yeah, we're seeing that on our end for sure.
Yeah, and it's even like I think from our perspective, because like the tariffs are directly related to like the problem we were solving, people buying inventory, and they were then going, well, I'm not going to be buying inventory if it's going to be 100% tariff to go from China to America. And now look, obviously that's all calmed down, but because they probably lost that 2 or 3 month window where they're typically judging what they need and who they're going to get it from, it's now been reduced to maybe a couple of weeks that they're going, the cliff edge of me making this order for my December period is coming. Like, sales aren't lost in November, they're lost in July and August when you place them, and it's now 31st of July, so like we're in that window. And even in Europe where we're based, we've only got certainty over certain tariffs in the last few days, so I'm sure we'll see a big influx of people from Germany who are selling into the US market. They're going to typically have time on their side. They're going to have to be decisive now. So yeah, I suppose hopefully you were prepared ahead of time, but if not, you need to get prepared now.
What is the typical time frame to get cash flow from Wayflyer?
Honestly, it's as quick as 48 hours if we've everything in place. So yeah, it's so 48 hours for a decision, and then I'd say 72 for the cash to arrive into your account. Look, it can be slower based off sometimes the underwriting process. There are going to be some things that are missing, such as like bank statements, maybe bits of the P&L that need a bit of cross-checking, and sometimes a few follow-up calls. But if you have everything in place and you're prepared to go into an underwriting process, it can be 72 hours.
Wow, crazy. There's one quick question we'll spend, and then we'll start with Peter, then Oscar, and Brian for key takeaways. Is there more opportunity you're seeing to raise prices given tariffs? And maybe this is best for Oscar. Like, what are you seeing? Is Amazon taking price increases? Are they going to Walmart?
So, like in a vendor central relationship, there was some discussion around so providing Amazon some information around tariffs affecting your business. But I always, pricing with so I always think you should be doing FBA, to be honest, to manage your price so that you can manage your profitability, because your costs are going to they're going to change. With that being said, so if this is, like you're controlling your offer, I think a lot of customers are not very interested in paying higher prices right now, and not accepting it as much as they were. If I were going to be raising prices, I'd also look to get some new content, to be candid. I think some new images and some new way of presenting it could justify a slight increase. And that's probably how I would try to do it, as opposed to saying, hey, the tariffs are hitting me and I have to do this. I think I would try to show the client that there's a new dimension to the product that's worth paying for. So.
Awesome. Well, let's kick it around the horn for key takeaways. Peter, I'll start with you if you want to kick it to Oscar, and then Brian, wrap it up, take us home. Sound good?
Sounds great. Yeah, I mean, look, for me, key takeaways are really, it is a full funnel approach, not traditional full funnel marketing approach, but really making sure that you have your fulfillment in place, you have very strong marketing strategy and the capital to back that up and to really be successful. I think diversification, right, for me is key, right? We spoke about the pricing piece. Yes, do I raise prices on Amazon, or do I diversify to another marketplace where the margins are more competitive and able to keep the pricing the same and still hit the margins that I was hitting pre-tariff. So to me, those are key. And then automation, anywhere you can automate to really drive, be successful, and sort of lower your operational cost is going to be key to winning in the future.
Cool. Thanks, Peter. I think for me, the key takeaways, I think the first is understand that no matter how complex these businesses get, it does ultimately come down to kind of three things. And it's understanding the rules of the platform that you're selling on, understanding the rules of moving a product physically through this world and the operations that come along with that, and then driving awareness to those things. And I think the more you can kind of just boil it down to that and what action you're taking and where does it live can help you. I think the other thing is understanding that your e-commerce marketplace offer, be it Amazon, Walmart.com, TikTok Shop, whatever, it is a constant improvement. It is a constant improvement. And so, don't judge yourself on, past failures, learn from them. And the last thing is kind of at Amazon, we were always taught it's day one. It's the first day of you engaging and thinking about your customer. And kind of as we talked about before, some brands get kind of stuck in old ways because they solved it before, but things have changed. If you keep that day one mentality, that new mentality, every day you wake up, you're thinking about your customer in a new way. You're thinking about them coming up for the first time to your product, to your service, to what you're offering, and trying to really put yourself in their shoes. I think you can then continue to say, all right, this is fairly simple. We can execute this, and let's just, stay in front of these people. So those are kind of the key takeaways. Is there's a simple couple things to focus on, and it's just a constant improvement. So,
yeah, I suppose even just in terms of reflecting on the call today, we're discussing how things were, I don't want to say easier because it's not that they were easy back then, but they're definitely harder now. So I'm sure people 5 years ago, it took me a long time to get to where I am. But as things have gotten more difficult, the solutions have also gotten better. And the opportunity in Amazon is still massive. I feel like anytime we're talking about Amazon, obviously going to omnichannel, it's always a good idea. It's always a good idea to diversify, but we almost put our back on Amazon as if it's not a good thing. It still is a good thing, and there's a reason why we're talking about it, because there's opportunity to be had there. Like Hawk Media and Limworks and Wayflyer, we're constantly evolving, looking at ways to improve. And look, I suppose we have to, because our businesses exist to help companies on Amazon, and Amazon wants it to be competitive. So as long as that opportunity is massive, I still think there's a lot to be optimistic about.
Awesome. Well, Peter, Oscar, Brian, thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for all the great insights. Thanks everybody for dialing in. I encourage you to follow up with the team here at Linworks Hawk Media. and Wayflyer. They're awesome friends, partners, supporters of the network. Look for a follow-up email from me as well. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But with that, we're going to wrap up this webinar here. Thanks again, everybody. Everybody take care, stay safe, and look forward to having you at a future event. Thanks, everybody. See you.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thank you. See you later.